Welcome back, guys. We're back with Elsa Marie Keefe. Elsa, if you could please talk about the painting or the piece to your right, its different components, how this came about, and the process in general, and we'll kind of go from there.
All right, so basically this is an example of a mixed media piece. I call them mixed media pieces, composite pieces. Basically, I'm merging the digital photograph with paint, natural objects that I've collected that were previously a part of the earth, and I'm putting it all together in a way where it's very durable, cohesive, long-lasting, etc. So to rewind a little bit before I even get into the details of this, I did mixed media work way back when I was younger, so I always had this love for it. And then when I was in my Colorado Denver studio, I actually experimented with resin for the first time, which is what you see on top, this shiny kind of lacquer casing. And I just remember being so mesmerized. And at the time, I was faced with my studio space, and I had a lot of different piles of leaves and rocks that I collected in nature. And I was just like sitting in my studio looking at them thinking, what am I going to do with all this stuff? I always collect rocks and leaves and flowers when I'm out and about in the world, and I can't throw them out, and I love them. And as I'm sitting there one day just kind of flabbergasted, I had this epiphany that I should just put them all on a canvas and pour the resin on them. And so I did that as an experiment. And I loved how it turned out. My friend loved it. You know, she had a great eye, and she was like, you have to keep doing this. And I was like, okay, you're right. This is awesome. And then I also had always loved, ever since doing photography when I was younger, I always loved the idea of like painting on top of the photograph. So between the new experiment with the resin and kind of my ongoing desire to like take the photograph to another dimension with adding things, slowly but surely this aesthetic came to be. And I will say lastly, again, before I get into it, there's this word here, visions, and you can see, I don't know if you can see in the frame, but I have another piece that says walk into fear. I was always very interested in adding words to my images.
Do you want to show the walk into the fear of the camera because it's not in the frame?
So it's just a little example right here, nothing too special, just like a basic example of adding words. But it's really interesting because I studied typography. I studied typography in college, and I always really liked font and words. Over time, even though I used to say I don't believe in words because there's too much subjectivity, now I do believe in words again, and I'm redeveloping my relationship with them. And I've collected words for years. Like whenever I publish a book, I'll put in words. And so anyway, my professors in college always warned me, do not put words on the images. You're going to ruin the objectivity, or you're going to like ruin it. And so I was always scared. But finally, like I started becoming more fearless as I got older, especially within these bigger works. So what I do for these, I love working at this size. Ideally, I'd be working at even larger size, but because of my life circumstances, I'm making a smaller series now because I'll be on the road and it's easier to bring in a small sample piece to people. But basically what I do is I have the digital image, which of course you see on a computer screen, you can print it on paper, but in this case I print it on a rolled canvas, and I don't have a huge printer in my house, much less even a printer that can really print on canvas reliably. So I always order out to a local company if possible, and I receive like literally a rolled canvas from them, a print of my photograph. And then I paste down the canvas, like I roll out the canvas onto a wooden panel. And these are basically like, this is a thick example of the wooden panels, not usually this thick, but it looks like that. And that's like what it looks like in the back of these. But the reason that I roll the canvas onto the wood is that in the final stage, I pour resin, and the resin is like very, very thick and very porous. And a few times I made the mistake of pouring resin onto a canvas, and it just seeps right through the canvas. So you end up using like hundreds and hundreds of dollars of resin because it keeps going through the canvas. And resin's already super expensive. Like a piece this size already takes a few $100s of resin. So anyway, the wood helps the resin just clearly move off the piece. But before the resin stage, so I roll out the canvas onto the wood, I paste it down with like a clear paint, basically, a clear varnish or lacquer. And then I add more paint. I add all different objects that I collect in nature, like bones, leaves, crystals. Occasionally I will just leave the photograph on the wood in the case of some of my newer works, because I literally don't have time to do any resin, and it's nice to have a raw look. But I really love working in this way because it almost becomes sculptural in 3D. Like if you look at the piece from over here, you can see the bone coming off the piece and the seashell, and you can see the little sea glass I collected and the little leaves and the pieces of bark that I peeled off the tree with gold paint. And after I place all of these objects down, because I'm working on a horizontal surface, like the whole piece is on a table like this as I'm working. So I'm placing everything down, and then I mix the resin, which is 2 parts of a substance, very toxic, wearing a gas mask, and then I pour in a perfectly ventilated and temperatured room. You pour the resin over it all, and that is what cements all of these objects, and they become extremely sturdy and durable. In fact, my first piece that's over on that side of my studio, I poured the resin to cement the leaves and bones in that first piece, and I was in Brooklyn at the time in my Brooklyn studio, and I was going to my show to show my first large-scale piece this size, and the wind blew over the piece, crashed onto the pavement. If this was glass, which actually looks like glass, if this was fragile, it would have been over. And I worked for months on that piece because it was my first big one. And I picked it up and it literally looks brand new. Like, that's how durable the resin makes it. So that's why I love working with this, is because you literally, like, obviously I would never purposely do that, but like, God forbid, something crashes into it or it falls down, or like it's subject to extreme weather. Like my parents have one of my pieces outside their house on the North Shore of Boston, and the piece has been outside year round through snowstorms, and it's good as new. So that's kind of the story behind these. Very durable, long lasting, and really fun to make.
For the viewers at home, I can testify that it is 3D. This is a reason why I highly recommend that if you ever go to try to see somebody's work, you see it like in person, because the 2D version does not do it justice. It's like akin to taking a look at the thick brush of like a Van Gogh painting. I don't want to say it's ridiculous, because it's part of the artwork, but it's close akin to what I can think of. We're going to take a short break, Elsa, and thank you very much.